Grok 4.5, GLM 5.2, and MiniMax M3 all claim frontier coding performance, so I ran their published cost, speed, and benchmark numbers against each other to see who actually deserves your budget. The surprise, the model everyone calls the best coder around wins that fight, but it's the one nobody's talking about that wins almost everything else. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one to point your API key at, and which one you're overpaying for if you pick wrong. This is the number that decides whether your monthly bill stays sane or spirals once an agent starts calling the model thousands of times a day. According to official docs, Grok 4.5 charges $2 per million input tokens and $6 per million output tokens. GLM 5.2 comes in a bit lower at $1.40 in and $4.40 out, and that pricing is unchanged from GLM 5.1, so whatever capability jump happened between versions came free. MiniMax M3 undercuts both by a wide margin at 30 cents in and $1.20 out. Run the math and MiniMax M3 is 6.7 times cheaper than Grok 4.5 on input and 5 times cheaper on output. That gap traces back to a real event too. MiniMax cut its prices 50% permanently after developer backlash over the original rate. At 10 million output tokens a month, MiniMax M3 costs about $12. Grok 4.5 costs $60 for that exact same output. MiniMax M3 wins this test clean. My name is Brian, and I spend most of my week digging through AI products, benchmarks, APIs, and pricing pages to figure out where these tools actually differ. Cost doesn't matter if the model can't actually finish the job, so this is where Grok 4.5 gets to make its case. On SWE Bench Pro, a vendor-reported figure, Grok 4.5 leads at 64.7%, ahead of GLM 5.2's 62.1% and MiniMax M3's 59.0%. The bigger separator is SWE Bench verified, and this is where trust levels matter. Grok 4.5's 86.6% score is independently confirmed, not just something XAI is saying about itself. GLM 5.2 lands around 81.8% on an optimized endpoint, and MiniMax M3 sits at 80.5%, vendor reported. Grok 4.5 also leads Terminal Bench 2.1 at 83.3% against GLM 5.2's 81.0 and MiniMax M3's 60.0, and that last gap is the widest one in this whole test. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Grok 4.5 takes coding benchmark performance, and it's the only test it wins outright in this comparison. That's a real lead, but it's a 6-point gap across 3 models, not a blowout. A model that codes well but crawls through a response breaks the feel of working with it, especially in an agent loop firing constant calls. According to artificial analysis, GLM 5.2 posts the fastest median output speed at 100.9 tokens per second, ahead of Grok 4.5 at 91.3 and MiniMax M3 at 81.9. So push into optimized third-party endpoints and the gap gets absurd. Fireworks runs GLM 5.2 at 446 tokens per second, more than 4 times. Grok 4.5's best peak number of 133. Grok 4.5's speed also swings hard depending on its reasoning configuration, moving anywhere from 53 to 91 tokens per second, which makes it the least predictable of the 3. GLM 5.2 wins speed, and it isn't close once you look at optimized hosting. That's roughly a 10% edge over Grok 4.5 and a 23% edge over MiniMax M3. Stick with me, because the last 4 tests are where this decision actually flips. Now stick with me, because this is the test where a big spec number stops being theoretical and starts deciding whether your agent finishes a job or gets cut off mid-generation. On context window, GLM 5.2 and MiniMax M3 both officially support 1 million tokens, while Grok 4.5 caps out at half that, 500,000 TLRs. The bigger difference is on output. Grok 4.5 and GLM 5.2 both cap around 128,000 tokens per response. MiniMax M3's hard cap is 512,000, 4 times either competitor. That matters directly the moment you're asking a model to rewrite a large file or generate a long document in one pass, instead of stitching partial outputs back together. MiniMax M3 wins this test on the strength of that output ceiling alone. There is a real caveat on context and output limits worth naming before we score it. That's a real gap, and it's Grok 4.5's smallest context window relative to its own lineup, since the cheaper Grok 4.3 actually supports the full million. The last test decides whether you can even run these models the way your project needs. Grok 4.5 is fully closed, API only through XAI, with no self-hosting path, and it wasn't available in the EU at launch. MiniMax M3 is also open weights, though under a custom license rather than MIT. On modality, GLM 5.2 is text only. Grok 4.5 handles text and image input. MiniMax M3 is the only one of the three trained on video from the start, meaning it can take screenshots or video as input, something the other two simply can't do. So this test splits. GLM 5.2 wins on license permissiveness for self-hosting, and MiniMax M3 wins on modality breadth. Since MiniMax M3 also self-hosts, it's the only model of the three, checking both the open weights box and the multimodal box at once. GLM 5.2 ships under an MIT license, fully open weights, the most permissive of the three for commercial use. Grok 4.5 wins where it counts most for raw coding ability, the top SWE Bench Pro score at 64.7%, and an independently confirmed 86.6% on SWE Bench verified, the only fully verified number in that category. That's the strongest case for paying its premium. GLM 5.2 wins on raw speed, 100.9 tokens per second, on artificial analysis, and a staggering 446 on optimized fireworks endpoints, plus an MIT license that makes self-hosting the simplest of the three. It's also within a few points of Grok 4.5 on most coding benchmarks for a lower price. MiniMax M3 wins everywhere volume and flexibility matter. 30 cents and $1.20 per million tokens, a 512,000 token output cap 4 times its rivals, and the only native video input of the three. At scale, that combination is hard to beat on price alone. MiniMax M3 is my default pick. The decisive reason: it wins cost, output ceiling, and modality outright, 3 of the 5 tests, and its coding scores are close enough behind Grok 4.5, 59.0 versus 64.7 on SWE Bench Pro, that the gap rarely justifies paying 5 to 6 times more per token. If you need the single best coding score money can buy, and cost isn't the constraint, Grok 4.5 is your lane. If you want open weights under an MIT license with the fastest raw speed for self-hosting, GLM 5.2 is your lane. But for most real workloads, especially anything high volume or multimodal, MiniMax M3's price to capability ratio wins the day. Here's what the marketing around Grok 4.5 leaves out. The claim floating around is that it's simply the best coding model you can buy. The number backing that claim, 86.6% on SWE Bench verified, is real and independently confirmed. But on SWE Bench Pro, the harder benchmark, Grok 4.5 scores 64.7%, and it trails Fable 5's 80.4% on that same test. Best coding model depends entirely on which benchmark someone hands you, and the headline number rarely comes with that context attached. If you want to see how these three stack up against the actual frontier leader instead of just each other, that comparison is coming next, and it changes this verdict more than you'd expect.